Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like na 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 na. For my top 10, top 10, na 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 na. This one's for my top 10.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more, and you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, John Assaraf, and my take on his top 50 rules for success. Enjoy.
There's a misconception that business is easy. And I have a lot of clients of mine, for example, that are doctors and lawyers and professionals that have an expertise in a certain area. But nobody's ever taught them about finance, about legal, if they're not a lawyer, about marketing, about sales, about technology, about operations, about management. And being an entrepreneur is like solving a Rubik's Cube.
Yes, I see that.
Right? So you can have the 2x2 with two colors, it's easy. If you want a little bit bigger business, that's 3x3. There's more combinations and more things that need to be considered. 4x4 now has billions of different moves. Just 4x4 is billions of different possibilities.
Wow.
When you get to the 8x8 or 16x16 Rubik's Cube, there's quintillions of possible moves that you can make. So building a business is all about recognizing patterns and knowing which move to make at the right time. And there's 4 options that you have. 1 is do it yourself and try and figure it out. 2 is get help. 3, get it done for you. Or 4, don't do it. Did you know that some of the most recent studies on setting goals and writing them out or typing them out on your computer will actually increase your chances of achieving those goals by up to 42%? Why? Well, as soon as you put the energy to writing out your goals and getting clarity, you're giving your brain the instruction that this is what's important to you. This is what you want to achieve. So don't be like all the other people where they have goals and dreams and they hope and pray for it to work. Be the type of person who sets her goals or his goals in writing and then focus on that every day and you'll achieve more of your goals. There's something in the weight loss industry field called a fat set point. And every brain has a fat set point. And it basically states that you have a set point, just like a thermostat that's programmed in a room to have a set point. We have fat set points. We have financial set points. We have relationship set points. We have these set points that we become accustomed to achieving. And then all of the supporting evidence, the stories, the themes, the plot lines, the perceptions and behaviors all must match the set point. And so you can ask yourself 2 questions. Number 1 is, how did that set point get there? And then how do I change it? Right? So how it got there is through all of your conditioning, through what you've read, what you've done, what you've experienced, what you've been told, what you've seen. All of that has created your financial set point based on your story. And so the first thing to recognize is the set point can be changed. And the question is how, right? And that's the $1 million question. So number 1, what drives behavior more than anything else? It's not skill. It's not knowledge. Skill and knowledge is potential power, but what does drive behavior more than anything else is beliefs. And so if there is a belief in the brain that says, yes, I think I'm capable of achieving double my income. We'll just use double my income. But there's another belief that opposes that. That causes what we know as neural dissonance. So it creates a chaotic vibration in the brain between the conscious and non-conscious mind. So the key is to get alignment between the new goal, which is a conscious pattern of thought that you can choose in an instant, and the non-conscious part of the brain around that goal. So how do you develop a belief, right? So it's a pattern. So if I gave you a sentence and you said that sentence one time, you probably, great, it'd be a sentence like one. It was like hearing a line in a song one time. But if you heard a line in a song repeatedly 20, 30, 40, 50 times, and you had other associations with that to reinforce that pattern, then you would start to develop a non-conscious pattern through that. So we know that using, let's say, visualization, you're actually bypassing the conscious mind and you're accessing the visual cortex of the brain. It's a non-conscious process, the visual processor. And so if we take words and we affirm them and we feel them and we visualize them and repeat them 100, 200, 500, 1,000 times, now we start to create a pattern at the non-conscious level that basically reinforces a conscious desire. A lot of people ask me about money all the time. It's one of the things we teach people how to do is grow their businesses and how to make more money. And they say, well, I want to make more money. I said, well, in order to make more money, first, you have to believe that you can, right? Then you have to believe you deserve it. Then you have to make sure that you have something that you can earn money with. So it's either going to be your ideas. You can sell your ideas. You
like
can
a trainer.
Like a trainer. You can sell your time. You can sell your products. You can sell your services, which means that you have to have some skill. Or you have to have somebody else who could do it for you.
You have to see your skill, right?
Well, you have to either see your skill or determine what skills are needed.
Okay.
And if you don't have it, get somebody else who has it to help you. And so when somebody tells me I want to make more money, I say to them, let's say we have a pen. I don't have a pen here, but if we had a pen
Yes.
and we wanted to make money, we could go and find somebody who wants to buy this pen right now. And how much is somebody willing to pay for the pen? Well, if the pen is worth $1, maybe you can get $1 for it. But what about finding somebody who needs it because they have to sign a contract that's due in 10 minutes? That person might pay $100 for that pen.
Yeah.
So our job is to take, our skills, our knowledge, our products, our services, our abilities, and to be able to present it to people who need it and want it in exchange for money. Hey, this is John Assaraf, and do you love good books? I love to read because there's so much wisdom in books. You get to take somebody else's knowledge, skills, research, pay $15, $20, and you learn so much. Now, I'm reading this awesome book called Built to Serve. Find your purpose and become the leader you were born to be. And one of my new friends, really smart guy, really great guy who serves a lot of people, Evan Carmichael, wrote it. And I'm going to read a little bit from chapter number 1. And I love this piece. And maybe it's because I just watched the series on TV on Michael Jordan, The Last Dance, which is really great, by the way, also. But one of the things he says here is everybody has Michael Jordan talent at something. Everybody has a Michael Jordan talent at something. You just haven't found it yet. Or you have and you don't believe in yourself enough to go all in. To go all in, right? And you're a genius. I believe you're a genius. And so does he. You're amazing. You are not meant to live a photocopy of someone else's life. You were not created to wake up and do work that is below your capabilities. You have Michael Jordan level talent at something, and you need to uncover exactly what your purpose is and how you can serve and use the serve. So lots of pearls and gems and motivational pieces. Pick up Built to Serve. Evan Carmichael, rising star. I think feeling and knowing that you've used your life in a way that makes yourself proud, that you're proud of. You felt like, what a journey. And I left it all out on the field. I just left it all in the field. That's my own greatness, is knowing that I used my life in a way that I left it all out on the field, that the bruises, the bangs, the trials, the tribulations, the highs, the lows, that you used it. As soon as you blame, shame, or justify, you are disempowering yourself instead of being responsible for your emotions, your feelings, your attitude, and your actions. When you take responsibility, then you are not at the mercy of the outside world and what happens in the outside world. You learn how to upgrade your emotional ability. So whether you're happy or sad or disgusted or frustrated or angry or fearful, you know how to navigate the emotions that causes either the motivational center in your brain to light up or the fear center in your brain to light up, thereby causing you to stop and procrastinate and not take action. Everybody can be an entrepreneur, but I don't want anybody to go and be an entrepreneur who's got a lot of passion, for a product or a service or something that they love, without realizing that there are many hats that you have to wear. Right? There's the person who has to know all the little details. There's the person who has to have the vision. There's the person who has to manage. There's the person who has to create the strategies and the tactics of what to do. Then there's the person who has to drive those forward. Those are 6 different things that have to be done, just different hats in a business that most entrepreneurs aren't aware of.
Yeah.
And so they start and they're busy and they're working really hard and they go, God, this is hard.
Yeah.
And it is hard. And they think that they have to do it all themselves. And that's not the truth.
Yeah, you have to learn to delegate, right?
Yeah. Well, you can delegate, you can partner with people, you can barter with people. There's a variety of different ways to do it. But first you have to know what you don't know.
It's not easy.
Well, it's not easy if you're the one trying to figure it out. But if you talk to somebody or hire somebody who's an expert, they'll tell you in seconds. It's like, when you came over here, and you're setting up all your cameras and your lights and all that stuff, you did that in 15 minutes. If I was to do that, it would take me 15 days. Because you're playing at this.
Yeah.
You've done 150 interviews now, right?
Yes.
And so you already know, you've learned 150 times and a setup and takedown and mistakes and what to do right, what to do wrong, what you need to have backups for, what to do for editing, for lighting, for daytime, for nighttime, for clouds, if the voice works, if the sound. There's hundreds of things you have to learn just for this.
Yeah.
Oh, and you have to be an excellent interviewer too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's so many things that you didn't know when you first started this that now you know. So imagine if I wanted to do what you do, I could say, well, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go and figure out which cameras to buy and which lighting to buy and how many batteries do I need and how many wires do I need and how many plugs do I need for the walls and how many backup systems do I need. I could try to figure all that out. Or I could say to you, can you do me a favor? Can you give me a list of what to do, what not to do, what to buy, what not to buy, how much it should be, where I should buy it? You could say, yeah, I could do that in 1 or 2 hours.
Yeah.
I could save months, if not a year of my time and
emotion,
money.
and everything.
Right. And so I much prefer to find the specialized knowledge and pay for that and just apply it. If you don't understand that every brain has an error detection mechanism within it, okay, what is that? Anytime you veer out of your comfort zone, the fat point setting or the financial setting, anytime you veer out of it, the first line of defense is self-talk that's negative. That's the first thing that pops up because your brain is going, that's not true. So it's detecting an error between what you said as an affirmation or even what you just visualized or even what you just did against the predominant neural patterns that exist. So it's an 800-pound gorilla initially fighting the flea, right? In Dan Heath's book. And so what we want to do is we want to get the conscious goal, the vision, aligned with the non-conscious pattern. And as soon as you align that, you have neural coherence. And when you have neural coherence, that's like hearing your most favorite band playing your favorite song, and you're just like, oh, that's the best.
Bliss, yeah.
It's just bliss. Yeah. If it's not bliss, you're out of coherence. And so the key and why we start off early with meditation is awareness of how do I tune in my vibration? How do I let go of that unempowered self-talk, that sentence, that thought that I had, or that disempowering? It's an unpleasant feeling. Beliefs aren't good or bad. They're only pleasant to unpleasant at varying degrees. When we're out of coherence, it's unpleasant unless our life is on the line and safety is there. For the most part, a fear of failing, where's that coming from? We failed our whole lives successfully.
Yeah, exactly.
But the meaning that we're giving, what people will say, what people will think, how I'll be embarrassed or ashamed, those are all the things that you need to really get in tune with.
Yeah.
Every level of success that you want to achieve in health, wealth, relationships, career, business, etc., requires a new understanding of a skill and a new behavioral pattern. What got you to where you are is not enough to get you to where you want to go. Why do I say that? Because if it was enough to get you to where you want to go, you would already be there. So what got you here will not get you there. Maybe some stepping stones, but every level of success requires a new level of skill and behavior. And I'm going to go back to one of the other lessons. Since we develop beliefs and habits and behaviors that go from conscious effort to non-conscious habits, in order to achieve the next level of success, you have to learn how to create new habits of thought, new emotional management skills, and new behaviors to match the level of success that you want to achieve. Because I felt dumb, I read thousands of books and did hundreds of courses. And because I didn't feel like I was smart enough, I took the thing that could have, made my life a mess and turned it into my fuel for success. And because I lived with parents that didn't have a great marriage, I ended up divorcing twice. But because of all of those things, I studied and researched and dove deep into who do I need to be to have a great relationship? What communication skills must I have? Who can I model that had a great relationship? I'm afraid not to do it now. So people ask me, when do you stop? Never. When they bury me is when I'll stop. I have such a habit of working on me, learning more, becoming more loving, more caring, more kind, more generous, more giving, more... where do you stop? And it's not a matter of acquiring more. I'm not going to eat any differently for the rest of my life than I eat now. I'm not going to eat bigger, meals. I'm not going to do things too much differently than I am now. So now it's a matter of expression and expanding more to do more good in the world. So in order for me to do more good in the world, I have to expand even my own mindset. I've got to get away from the fears that I have of maybe not being good enough or not being smart enough. I still get those feelings. But because of my daily rituals and my daily practices, I get back to my spiritual center, my spiritual core, and a little bit more confident and a little bit more certain every day towards the goals that I want to achieve. And I bridge that gap. And then when I reach those goals, keep doing it again. The more you can create success rituals, processes and systems, daily success rituals to activate your motivational centers, your emotional centers, and behaviors, the more you can create daily rituals of how you start a day, how you deal with stress during the day, how you plan your day, how you evaluate your day, how you follow through to the end of the day in a process that puts you in a cycle of success, the easier it becomes to achieve success and to make that the default mode of the brain. Once you understand that the power center is right within you and you learn how to just use the tools a little bit better, we've got the most powerful 3-pound tool in the world with no user's manual.
Right.
And so, no user's manual. And so we teach people, here's the latest research. Here's how you can apply it to your life to be healthier, happier, make more money, get a better job, get a raise, start your business and do better by retraining your brain to be totally and aligned with your goals and dreams, and learning, how do I stay focused? How do I stay motivated? How do I stay on track? How do I develop the habits that will empower me? And how do I do the things that inspire me instead of the things that expire me?
You all know that you have a conscious part of your brain that's responsible for certain things, okay? But then you also have a subconscious part of the brain, subconscious. And so what is this 800-pound gorilla that prevents you from achieving your goals? Like, what is it? Like, what do you think it is about the subconscious that prevents you from achieving your goals when consciously you want to achieve your goals, right? Consciously you want to achieve your goals. And Kamyar, yeah, we have, right hemisphere and left hemisphere of the brain. And in between, okay, we have something called the corpus callosum that connects both hemispheres. And contrary to popular belief, we're not, left brain dominant or right brain dominant. We use all of our brain every 24 hours. So you don't use only 5 or 10% of your brain. The possibilities are endless. All right. But when you're talking about the gorilla, the subconscious is the, what I talk about in the book, right, is I named it the gorilla. So conscious and subconscious, yes. And so tell me what you know about the subconscious mind. Like, if it is the 800-pound gorilla, what do we know, right? The gorilla gets what the gorilla wants. And so if you ask yourself a question of, do I really know how to get my subconscious mind aligned with my conscious desires and goals? So answer that question for me. Answer me that riddle. Do you know how to get your subconscious mind? And by the way, the subconscious is not like here and the conscious is here. We know that the left prefrontal cortex, for example, is the seat of awareness, and it's the seat of decision making. It's the seat of choosing what we want. We know that this part of the brain we call the left prefrontal cortex, and it's what I call is the Einstein part of the brain. It can figure things out. You consciously can figure things out. The right prefrontal cortex is the pessimist, or what I refer to as the Frankenstein part of the brain that moves into the memory system and brings forth anything that may get you into trouble, anything that may be painful, anything that might hurt you. And so there's these things going on in the brain. If you think of your brain as an orchestra, and some of your brain is responsible to play certain pieces, and other parts of your brain are there to protect you. When those pieces oppose each other or are not in alignment, then you have chaos.
The fascination that I have is around living in a world right now where we have access to all the how-to. How do I make more money? How do I grow my business? How do I have a great relationship? How do I, find the love of my life? How do I put a rocket ship on Mars? And a lot of people are confusing having information and how-to with actually doing it. And I've been fascinated just in understanding, how do I help people unleash more of their potential that already exists? And a lot of people may have heard, they say that we only use 5 to 10% of our brain. And that's not true. We use 100% of our brain's capacity and neural networks every moment of every day. But the potential to use more is there. And so our researchers at NeuroGym really are uncovering how to take the best information from the world of neuropsychology, neuroscience, and give it to everyday people so they can say, okay, how do I overcome my fear of not being good enough, my fear of not being smart enough, my fear of being embarrassed or ridiculed or ashamed, or fear of failure or fear of success. These are all psychological issues that everybody feels, but very few people understand. When I feel that, what do I do about it so that I can unlock more of my potential, so I can actually take more action, first on the things I already know that I could be and should be doing, but I'm not, and next on the behaviors that I could be taking to achieve my success easier and faster. And that's really my passion, is helping people unlock that amazing potential within them. The beautiful thing about the time that we're living in now is we can share knowledge and experiences, and anybody with a phone, an iPad or a smartphone or an Android or a computer, anywhere in the world, in the Kalahari Desert, in Antarctica, can get access and get inspired.
It's the best ideas in the world.
Yeah, to get the best ideas in the world, but to see that we're no different. None of us are different. The illusion is that we're different because we're comparing who we are compared to the person that we're listening to or learning from, and we're seeing the gap. And the gap is what causes us to be uncomfortable. But if we remember, we're all spiritual. We're all made from the exact same thing. If you think about the human body, it's made of hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, helium. There's elements. Well, we came from the furnaces of stars. You can't have carbon, in the human body that didn't come from the inside of a star. Helium and hydrogen is what the Big Bang was initially made up of. And then as all the gases coalesced and created stars and then galaxies, we became, our flesh and blood and everything that we became, the organism, has come from the universal intelligence. That's why we're all connected. And that's why we all have the same abilities, different skills, different knowledge, but the same abilities to become all of the ideas, goals, and dreams that we have. And so we just have to say, that is what I want to trade my life for. And even though I don't know how, even though I may not feel totally comfortable or confident, or I'm lacking certainty, let's get on the path, and then we can change the world together.
If everybody could imagine for a moment you're driving a car and everything's going great, and all of a sudden a light pops up on your dash. Now, the average person won't take a hammer and hit the light to turn it off. An average person will take a look at, what is that light? Am I low on windshield wiper fluid? Am I low on air in my tires? Is my back trunk open? What's going on? So just like the signal in a car is meant to make you aware, fear is a trigger in our subconscious mind that real or imagined danger has percolated in our brain. And so fear, there's nothing wrong with fear. We can actually use fear as fuel. Now, I like to, give people visuals. So imagine if you have, two parts of your brain. There's many more, but imagine these two. We have the Einstein brain and we have the Frankenstein brain. And when fear gets activated, let's assume that that's our Frankenstein brain going, what if? What if you get hurt? What if you lose money? What if you die? What if you get embarrassed, ashamed, ridiculed, or judged? And so why does Frankenstein even get activated? Because we're not born with those fears. And so if we're not born with those fears, that means that something in our brain is triggering this reaction automatically without our thought. And that is what we call as the fear response. And we also know that that fear response causes something called the sympathetic nervous system to activate, which causes us to want to fight, freeze, or run away. That's just the absolute reaction at a biological level of what is happening. Now, when we want to deactivate that sympathetic nervous system, there's several what I call our exercises that we can do that actually gives us more control, more power, and the ability to reactivate the Einstein part of the brain. So exercise number 1 is really, really simple. It's called Take 6, Calm the Circuits. So as soon as you catch yourself in a state of doubt, fear, worry, anxiety, stress, that means that Frankenstein's activated. If you just took 6 deep breaths in through your nose as slowly as you could, and then you exhaled as if you're exhaling through a straw in your mouth, if you just did that 6 times, that very simple exercise would deactivate the Frankenstein brain and allow you to reactivate your thinking, imagination, Einstein part of your brain. And then you can do the second exercise, which puts you right back in control. And that one I call is AYA, A-I-A, which is now a matter of awareness. Awareness of my thoughts, emotions, feelings, sensations, or the behaviors that I've just taken, or the one I'm afraid to take. And in a pure state of awareness without judgment, blame, shame, guilt, or justification. Let me repeat, without any judgment, blame, shame, guilt, or justification of the feeling or the thought or the behavior, now I'm empowered again because now I can observe. And now in this observational mode, I could say, okay, what's my intention, let's say for the next 10 minutes? Well, my intention is to be happy. Great. My intention is to be productive. Great. My intention is to, take action on this one thing that's going to help me towards my goal and dream. So in the awareness and in the intention, then if I say, what's one small action step I could take towards what I want instead of what I don't want? So all of a sudden, I've interrupted a fear pattern. I've created this state of awareness. I've set an intention, and now I'm taking action towards what I want versus being paralyzed by what I don't want and a fear that may or may not be real. So awareness is what actually gives us choice, and choice is what actually gives us freedom if we make the right choices. We all have these patterns that are subconscious, that are driving our behaviors more than our conscious efforts. And so when we're dealing with the gorilla in the brain, and again, it's a metaphorical way to look at it, you have to understand that the gorilla is going to get whatever the gorilla is wired to get. The gorilla does not care about what you consciously want. The gorilla really focuses on the patterns that are going to keep it safe. And here's what safe means. Safe just means comfort zone. Let's say you're miserable. Let's say you're broke. Let's say you're overweight. Let's say you're in a relationship that you don't like. Let's say you're a job you don't love. That is safe to the gorilla. Why? Because it knows the pain it's already dealing with. It knows the discomfort. It knows the price it's paying already, versus getting out of that comfort zone, leaving the job that you're not happy with, leaving a relationship that you're not in love with, trying to earn more income, getting out of debt. You could be in debt and comfortable. You could be in a relationship you hate and comfortable. You could be in a job that you don't love and comfortable. And the gorilla is going to keep you in your comfort zone.
When I was 19 years old, okay, when I had a mentor, a man who was in his 50s, very, very successful, he agreed to mentor me and to teach me what he knew. And so he sent me home with some paper. And on the paper it said, what do you want to achieve in your health? What do you want to achieve in your relationships? What do you want to achieve financially? What do you want to achieve charity? What do you want to achieve as far as experiences? When do you want to retire by? How much money do you want to make? Wow. He asked me about 10 pages of questions. And at 19, I had no idea. Like, how much do I want to make? I want to make enough to pay my bills. I want to make enough to, just eat well and then have some fun. I want to go drinking with my friends. I want to go party and travel a little bit and pay for my apartment and a nice car and things like that. But he had me think, 1 year, 5 years, 25 years. And I was 19, and he made me write down the answers to these questions, even though I had no idea how to achieve them. He made me write it down. It took me a whole weekend. And then I went back and he looked at my papers. And so he looked at health and wealth and relationships and career and business. And he goes, good, way to do the exercise. I'm very proud of you. He says, now I want you to increase that amount. And so I said that, by the time I was 45, I was 19. I said, by the time I was 45, I was going to be a millionaire. Nobody in my family was a millionaire. Not my aunts, not my uncles, not my cousins, nobody in the area that we lived in. And I wrote that down. And he said, no, that's not enough. He says, you could do better than that. And I'm like, I'm swallowing, I'm scared, I'm afraid. How am I going to become more than that? How can I have all of this? He says, don't worry about the how right now. You worry only, and not even worry, but you write down what you want. And so I went back home and started to write again.
Again.
And took another, half a day to redo my goals. And he said to me, great, now in order for you to achieve those goals, what do you have to believe?
Wow.
I said, well, I have to believe that I can. I have to believe that I deserve it. And even though I didn't believe that I deserved it, he said, what would you think you had to believe? I have to believe that it could be done. I have to believe that I could learn the skills. I would have to believe. So he made me write out what I would have to believe.
Good question.
And then he said, great, what do you think you would have to do every day?
Wow.
I go,
Amazing question.
Well, I guess I would have to come to work every day, and I'd have to really get good at what I'm doing, and I'd have to learn more than I'm learning right now because I hated to learn back then, and I'd have to, gain more skills, which I didn't have any. The only thing I was good at was I had an easy time talking to people like I am with you now. And he said, great, well, let's make a list of all of these things, and let's come up with a plan to do this. He said, so every day, let's look at some beliefs. And so every day he would have me look at my goals. And I would sit in my chair and I'd have my goals, that he had me write. And I would take my fingers, which he told me to touch my goals, so that I would send a message to my brain as I was reading it and seeing it to reinforce the goals that I wrote. Then I would read the beliefs that I needed to have. I have all the intelligence I need to achieve these goals. I can now acquire all the skills to achieve these goals. And I read about 20 or 30 different beliefs every day. And for the first month or 2 months, while I was reading all of this, in my head, this one word kept coming up. You know what the word was? Bullshit. Because as I would read it, my brain would say, bullshit, that's not true. And he told me that my brain would try to talk to me and tell me it's not true. And he said, if you keep doing it over and over and over again, your brain's going to get tired of telling you it's not true. And especially if after you do this, you take some actions to upgrade your knowledge, upgrade your skills, you'll develop more confidence and more certainty. So he taught me how to use the telephone to make telephone calls to people to see if they were interested in buying a real estate property or selling their home. I was in real estate at 19. And for the first month it was hard, second month it was hard, the third month it was hard, but as I got better and more comfortable at being on the telephone, talking to people that I didn't know, that I thought didn't want to hear from me or talk to me, I found one person, then 2 people, then 3 people, then 5 people who said yes. Because as I became more comfortable, as I became more skilled, as I gained more knowledge, people received me differently. And in my first year, I made $30,000. I was 19, which was $5,000 more than my father made as a taxi driver.
Wow.
Then he started to upgrade my skills a little bit more. And he started to teach me some very specific things to do in real estate. And in my second year at 20, I made $151,000.
Wow.
5 times more income, because every day for 1 hour a day, I practiced my beliefs. I practiced seeing my vision. I rehearsed it. I got on the phone. I upgraded my knowledge. I upgraded my skills.
I love your story.
Thank you. And so he kept directing me a little bit at a time to become more tomorrow than I am today. And he said to me something that changed my life. He says, if you invest 1 hour a day on your personal growth and changing who you believe you are, that is the equivalent of 9 40-hour weeks of effort. 1 hour a day for a year is 9 40-hour weeks. If you and I said today, we're gonna learn breakdancing, or we're gonna learn knitting, and we're gonna spend 9 weeks, 40 hours a week, we would get good at painting, we would get good at knitting, we would get good at darts, we would get good at playing a musical instrument if we were committed to 1 hour a day. So I've practiced 1 hour a day for 32 years.
Wow.
And that 1 hour a day has changed my life. Vision board for seeing what you want. The accomplish board for reminding yourself that you've got a lot that you've accomplished, so you feel good. And the crap board.
Do you actually put up images of things you've accomplished?
Yeah. I have them in my closet, in my home, encased on the floor.
Like on the floor so that you don't look at them? So I look at
them just because I sit down to put on my shoes. I want to look at them every day.
Interesting.
Yeah. On my, I have this ritual as well. I do something called brush and prime. So on my bathroom mirror, I have my goals that are on my mirror, so that as I'm brushing my teeth, I'm priming my brain to see my goals in front of me every morning and every night.
I love that.
Right, so that's priming your brain, which is a whole other topic we can have. And then the accomplishment boards reminds me, whenever I look at the stuff that I've accomplished, I go, that wasn't easy. I mean, there was a lot of ups, downs, highs, lows, failures, times I thought I'd quit and I didn't. So it's to remind me to go through the times that I don't think I'm going to be able to achieve those things. And then the crap board stands for conflict, resistance, accomplishments, and procrastination. So what conflicts are happening right now that I need to resolve? What resistance is in my way? What am I resisting? What in front of me is resisting right now? And then accomplishment as well is to remind you that you can get through stuff. And then procrastination is what's causing me to procrastinate. So if you create a crap board as well, you have that in front of you, and then you can create a game plan for what am I going to do about it? What am I going to do about the conflicts? If you think about what makes up who we are. So obviously there's genetics. There's our genetic makeup, so our predisposition, our propensities. And that makes up a percentage of how we see the world and how we show up. But then the rest of it, we're trained on. So we're trained to see the world a certain way. So there are certain people that have something called a negativity bias. And a negativity bias is nothing more than they see the negative first. It's not that they don't see the positive, but they see the negative first. There's other people who see positive first. They have a positivity bias, and they see that first. And the truth is, in almost every situation, in every circumstance, there's both. You can train somebody to recognize that there's always both, just like every inside has an outside, every one side of a coin has another side of a coin, every up has a down. That's called the law of polarity. And in the universe that we live in, there is that law of polarity. And so you can teach somebody, say, okay, if your propensity, if the way you naturally are is negativity biased first, great, be aware of that. Then flip over. We call it flip the switch. So if one side of your brain is going negativity first, great. Learn to flip the switch. Go, great. what's the positive side of that? That's a skill you can learn no differently than playing tennis or chess or music.
When you sit down to meditate, do you come with an intention then each time?
No, once I sit down, then I ask my intuition, hey, what is it that you want to be doing today? What is it that you need today? So we all have this intuition, which is different than our instinct. But this intuition, right, it's what we know before we think. And so when I sit down, I say, okay, hey, what's the intention for today? And sometimes the intention is to just let go and see what happens. Sometimes the intention is I'm searching for an answer. Sometimes the intention is, well, today focus, today let go, today just breathe. So I just listen. It's the art and the subtle science of paying attention. Back in 1987, when I bought the franchising rights for Remax of Indiana, I had no idea how to build a company. I was, 26 years old. And, but I had another mentor who I invested $75,000 to become his partner, to have the opportunity to learn from this man who at the time was worth probably $100 million. And so I was very, very keen on learning, and I didn't know how to build a business. I didn't know anything other than how to sell real estate. And I set a goal to generate $1 billion a year in sales. And I set the goal for 5 years in the future, not knowing $1 billion goal is like mind-boggling big for me. And there was an interview the second week I was in Indianapolis. I moved from Toronto to Indianapolis for this opportunity. And I was interviewed by the Indianapolis Business Journal. And I said in the interview that I had a goal for $1 billion. And the reporter said, are you aware that there's two companies that have been in the state of Indiana for 80 years, one, 100 years, the other one, and they haven't hit $1 billion in real estate sales in all of these years? And I said, yeah, I know. It's Graves and Tucker. And you can let them know that I'll be the first. Right? And as I said that, I almost felt like I put my foot right in my mouth because I didn't know how I was going to do it.
Right.
Long story short, 5 years later, we sold enough franchise, recruited enough agents. We did $1.2 billion, and we were stuck, which is a great place to be stuck. And I was asking myself, how is it possible that I'm training these agents with strategies, with tactics, with selling skills, marketing skills? We were like the gurus of here's the books, here's the cassettes, here's the trainers, here's like out of the deep end. And the agents who, for example, would make $30,000 a year kept making $30,000 a year. The agents who made 50 kept making 50. The agents who made 100 kept making 100. And so I realized that they weren't missing the skills or the knowledge. There was something else at play. And what helped me from the age of 19 to 27, 28, 30 was every single day, and I still do it today, and I'll share this with you in just a little bit. Every single day, I was priming my brain with the beliefs and the self-image required to achieve the goals that I wanted.
When we talk about reprogramming, I think the important thing to understand is 99.9% of what we think, what we feel, and what we do, although most people think I'm in control, I'm the one doing it, it's really non-conscious patterns that are repeating themselves over and over again. So let me explain. When you and I were born, the only neural networks that we had were for survival. Right? We didn't have any beliefs of, are we good enough? Are we smart enough? Are we worthy? We didn't have any experiences to show us that that's a scary situation, that one's not. Snakes are safe, or snakes are dangerous, or spiders, or heights, or whatever the case is. So over the course of the first 7 to 10 years of our life, our brain's plasticity switch, our brain's switch that connects all of these neurons and creates the neural map in our brain is being created in the form of millions of connections per second. By the time we're 10 or 12 years old, that switch basically goes off, and now there's more selective creation of neural patterns based on what we like, what we dislike, what we experience, what our parents tell us, what our teachers tell us. Up until that time, we're just an empty, open nest where everything's being formulated. And so what happens is after 10, 12 years old, we're pretty much running on autopilot. And we become conditioned or trained to see the world a certain way, to feel certain things, to behave in certain ways. And so most of our life we're working on autopilot because the non-conscious processing parts of our brain is working at 400 billion bits of information per second and trillions of electrical and chemical reactions per second happening without our thinking about it. And so for adults, 25, 35, 45, 50, we have these patterns that we have to revamp, almost like a remodeling of our own brains. If you think about, when you're driving in a town that whether you're at home or in your city that and all of a sudden you see a detour. If you take a detour and then you start driving down that new detour for a day, 7 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, that detour becomes the new easy road to take. Even though you're used to going a certain way. The brain works the exact same way. So if you've got these patterns that are easy for you, your brain wants to take those patterns that are easy for you. Easy thinking patterns, easy emotional patterns, easy behavioral patterns. Why? Number one, because it's less energy that the brain needs to use. So law of best use of energy in the brain is where it goes first. So the way you retrain your brain using, for example, the 4R process is you recognize my patterns of thought, my patterns of emotion, my patterns of behaviors. And you ask yourself, are these going to help me achieve the goal that I want to achieve? Whatever the goal is. It's just yes or no. If they are, great. If they're not, then what you want to be doing is saying, okay, how do I change that path? How do I change my thinking?
I'm learning that I could be still. I'm learning that I could be aware of my thoughts, but then let them go, and I come back to focus on a sound wave in this particular meditation. And then what happens is, over a period of practice, you realize that your body disappears. You're no longer in this physical thing. You're no longer having these waves of thought after thought after thought after thought after thought after idea, positive, negative, and everything in between. And in that space of recognizing that I'm not my physical body, I have a physical body. I'm not my thoughts, I have thoughts. I'm not my emotions, I have them. When you start to train yourself to use your brain better, more efficiently, more productively, you realize that I am one with this, incredible universe. So what's the big deal about that? Well, the big deal is that if I am one with this universe, with this energy, with everyone and everything, and that's where everything percolates from, is it possible that all my answers are right here, right now anyway? And the answer is yeah. And so meditation is about practicing, and we know that we have different brain waves. So right now, as people are watching or listening, they're in this beta brainwave frequency where their brain is oscillating at a certain frequency, and there's 50 different brainwaves going on at any given time. But what happens is when I move from beta to alpha to theta, delta, or gamma, I'm actually accessing and activating different parts of my brain, which now gives me this deeper, greater sense of awareness of a much bigger, onion that I'm used to seeing. So I'm living on a layer of an onion. And what if I could see like 10 layers up and 10 layers down? So all of a sudden it's like, wow, look at who I am, what I am, who you are, what you are. And in that realization, in that awareness, I can now start to have different choices made. And so meditation is a practice of awareness. It's a practice of going internal instead of external, which is where most people live their lives every day. The key is to really understand, first and foremost, that you have a brain. You're not your brain. The whole idea with Inner Size, right, is to create a pathway for you to be able to say, okay, here's how my brain works, simply as I've put it today, and here's what I could do about it to move out of a state of chaos and dissonance and into a state of coherence and alignment. When you were born, were you born with any beliefs?
No.
Were you born with any habits?
No.
Were you born with any fears?
No.
No. So from a neuroscience and neuropsychology perspective, a belief is nothing more than this. Imagine that you're born and your brain's made up of 100 billion marbles. And every time you have an experience or somebody says something to you, you read something or you watch something, these marbles make these connections. And the connections that are reinforced go from conscious connections to subconscious connections. And once these subconscious connections are made and reinforced, they run the show 98% of the time. So a belief is nothing more than a reinforced pattern in the brain. And our conscious brain can choose what we want when we're in that part of our brain, but our subconscious mind can't choose. It's programmed from the age of 0 to 3 in the imprinting years, 3 to about 7 or 8 the modeling years, and then 8 on, it's the experiential years. And so if you have these powerful beliefs that you're good enough, you're smart enough, you're worthy to achieve the goals that you have. If you have these powerful beliefs, you are able to achieve any amount of income you choose, no matter what the amount is, you just need to learn how. So if you have these empowering beliefs, you have brain coherence between conscious and subconscious.
We're in a society that just goes. Texts, emails, phone calls, Facebook, Twitter, Vine. All these things are keeping us on this perpetual hamster wheel of do, that very few people stop and say, what am I doing? What am I not doing? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? So the first part is stop. Second part is to reframe. It's called the 4R process. Recognize is first. Reframe is the way I'm looking at something. And because we are monofocused, the brain cannot focus consciously on more than one thing at a time. All right? It can get distracted to that thing, then this thing, then that thing, then this thing. The art of multitasking is actually one of the worst things that you can do from a neurological perspective. Highly successful people are able to monofocus on the right things. So when you learn to reframe your brain's ability to look at this, then look at this, then look at this, but stay focused on what it is that you're looking at, you see different perspectives of it. The next part is to release the emotional stress that most people's brains are under. How do we get into this emotional stress? Well, when we have fears, there's 50 different types of fears. Fear of success, fear of failure, fear of disappointment, fear of being embarrassed, fear of being ashamed, fear of being ridiculed, fear of fill in the blank. When our brain goes on these automatic fear circuit drives, then we're in a state of fight or flight. In a state of fight or flight, over a course of a day, a week, a month, our ability to actually use our thinking center, the left prefrontal cortex of our brain, actually diminishes. Our brain gets hijacked into this fight or flight response system over and over and over and over and over again. And that response system is actually pretty healthy initially to get you going and out of the gate. But if you are always in this fight or flight response mechanism, you're on this hamster wheel, you actually start to get burnt out. And you can't think, you can't use the genius part of your brain. You can't really activate the part of you that connects to the entire universe of intelligence within you and outside of you. And so you learn to release that tension to be able to put the foot back on the gas, change the gear. If you think about what happens when you're driving a stick shift car, you put your foot on the gas in first gear and the car just goes. But if you keep your foot on the gas in first gear, you're going to burn out the engine. So what happens in the release part of using your brain is you go from first gear, pause, second gear, pause, third gear, pause. You're able to use the engine more efficiently to go faster. Exact same thing with our brains. If we learn how to release the tension and switch gears, release the tension, switch gears, that's the art of release and go. And that causes the fourth R, and that's we retrain our brain to operate at higher levels of our intelligence, genius, and abilities.
What happens if at the subconscious level, okay, so you have conscious goal, conscious vision, conscious reasons why I want to achieve it. What happens if at the subconscious level, let's say for weight, You've tried to lose weight before, and maybe you have, but then you've gained it back. What if you've done that 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times? Is that pattern, okay, the memory, the pattern, locked in the subconscious mind of all those experiences? Is it there? So here's how the brain works. You set a goal using the left prefrontal cortex of your brain, your imagination, and then right after you set the goal and you're excited because you're making some progress, your brain says, hey, last time you did this, you gained all the weight back. Why even try? Last time you did this, and your friends saw that you did this, and then you gained all the weight back. Next time you saw them, you were embarrassed. You were a little ashamed of yourself. Last time you did this, or the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times before that, you gained all the weight back, and you disappointed yourself and your significant other because, you know, they said you looked really great, and then you gained all the weight back. So you disappointed them and yourself, and you were embarrassed or ashamed. And so that pattern is there, right? Do you all agree with me so far? The pattern is there. And so if you have, and think about your imagination and your choice to set a goal is one pattern that you formulate. But if underneath there's a subconscious pattern of embarrassment, shame, failure, guilt, disappointment, etc. If that pattern is also there, then you have 2 opposing patterns. You have one pattern that says, let's go and do this, but you have another pattern that says, but last time you did this, you failed, or you've seen your sister or brother or mother or father or friend do this, and guess what? They gained all the weight back anyway. So why even try? I'm going to keep you safe in your comfort zone. I'm going to conserve energy, and that way I'm going to save you some time and money and energy. Does that make sense to you? That is called cognitive dissonance. That is another way of saying that's called chaos in the brain. And a brain in chaos will do what? It'll just stick around doing the things that it's comfortable doing where it's known.
Something that I learned that I think people will benefit from is an anxiety attack, stress, panic, ulcerative colitis. All of these things are effects, right? So they're effects. So the question is, what's the cause?
Yes.
Right. So most people are focusing on either, suppressing the effects, depressing the effects, masking the effects. They're doing everything but going, what's causing this?
Yep.
And if we look at the world of cause, whether it's in our physical body, whether it's our relationship, whether it's our bank account, whether it's our business, whatever the result is, every result in the physical world is an effect. So the question is, what causes the results? And one of the greatest laws in the universe is the law of cause and effect. And it states that for every effect, there's a cause. And for every cause, there's an effect. And so I got really inquisitive and curious early on with, can I control more of the cause of my results? And that required responsibility. And when I was younger, it was like, I was more into the blame game. It's because of him, because of her, because of it, because of the market, because of where I live, because of my mother, my father, how old I am or how young I am, how Asian or Caucasian I am. It doesn't make a difference. So a lot of my upbringing caused me to look outside of myself. And when I looked inside myself and took the prerequisite of responsibility. I own it.
Yes.
And I can change it.
So important.
That transformed my life. That, that really started to put things into perspective.
If you think about visualization is simulation. Now, here is the difference.
Whoa, that's good. Okay, go ahead.
So visualization is simulation. So when we close our eyes, or even if our eyes are open and we start to use our Einstein brain, the imagination, we now have just activated one of the biggest centers of our brain, the occipital lobe, that's connected to the motor cortex. It's connected to the motivational circuit, the nucleus accumbens, that releases that dopamine that makes you feel good, that makes you want to take action. So if you visualize yourself achieving the goal, if you visualize yourself behaving in ways that match the new belief, if you even visualize the words, or you take the words on a sheet of paper, and you read them, run your right finger across it, run your left finger across it, close your eyes, see it and feel it, your brain is creating a mental movie with the words. And as it creates a mental movie with the words, that's happening in your subconscious mind. And when you give the subconscious these instructions, a couple things happen because of the way the brain hierarchy works. Number one is survival, but then number two is safety. And then number three is energy conservation. Now, when you do something 20, 30, 40, 50 times, it takes about 66 days to 365 days of repetition to override an old habitual circuit. Not 10 days, not 21 days, 66 to 365. So if you visualize yourself achieving the goal, feeling the success that you want to feel, seeing the belief on the screen of your mind, you are actually creating a neural network through the science of neuroplasticity, and the networks that you reinforce become the most dominant networks. And since your brain wants to conserve energy, if you do this on a consistent basis, your brain says, okay, you're doing this so often, let me just make this automatic. Let me set aside the old beliefs. Let me replace it with the new beliefs. And now you've deliberately and consciously evolved yourself.
One of the things that is really interesting, I mean, just based on what you said, there is something in business, whether it's for salespeople on the phones or salespeople in person. On the phone, it's called call reluctance, and in person, it's called contact reluctance. And so if you think about what does that mean? So I have a call reluctance. I have a reluctance to call somebody that I don't know. And so when some people think about calling somebody they don't know, when they're prospecting or meeting somebody they don't know, if you think about what is it that is actually happening that causes them to feel that. So as soon as they have the thought, their neurochemistry kicks in, because the meaning that they have is, if I call somebody that I don't know and they hang up on me, they yell at me, they say something nasty to me, then they are attacking my identity. And in most cases, they have associated the attack on their identity in a negative way, such as, well, maybe it's true that I'm not good enough. Maybe it's true that I'm not smart enough. Maybe it's true that I'm not worthy. So they have a negative association with somebody's response that they don't even know about who they are. So the first thing we work on is, let's focus on your self-esteem, because it's the self-esteem that's being attacked. My self-esteem and self-worth is being attacked. So when my self-esteem and self-worth is being attacked in a negative way or unpleasant way, I'm going to process that as danger in my brain. Now, when you understand the brain's number one responsibility is to move you away from danger or pain, that's number one on its hierarchy of how it behaves. So if there is real or imagined pain or discomfort, your brain says, stop, put the brakes on, go the other way. That's what's happening. So the first thing we do is we teach people, number one, let's change the meaning that you have around what somebody else's response is around who you are or what you're doing or what you're offering them. So the first thing we work on is change the meaning, you change the feeling.
The people who think that the law of attraction is think, believe, and you'll achieve. First, I'm going to tell you that's bullshit. So let's call it.
I love this, man. I love it.
But I want you to think of your brain just a little bit differently, and think of it this way. Let's say you love rock and roll. And let's say rock and roll's on station 95.5. If you're on station 92.1, that might be classical. If you're on station 98.7, that might be punk rock. But at 92.5, that's rock and roll. So imagine coherence just means locking your electromagnetic spectrum of your brain. Lock it and load it on exactly what you want. So what's the vision? What's the goal? What are the beliefs? What are the emotions that create coherence so you're locked and loaded to the frequency of the universe that is matching that goal? Part one. Part two is when you get locked and loaded, you've actually activated the Einstein brain, connected to the motor cortex, connected to the dopamine release in your body. And when that happens, okay, now you're in coherence, but there's another part that happens in this Einstein part of the brain. That's actually what the latest neuroscientists and psychologists are thinking is connected to this GPS part of our brain, to the frequency of where all of the tools, resources, people are that resonate with that frequency. So we've been evolving for 2.5 million years, since Homo erectus to now 108 billion humans on Earth, with a brain that's been changing and growing. And my belief is we're just scratching the proverbial surface. When we talk about, little quantum mechanics or quantum physics with entanglement, how we're all connected, we're all tuning into the frequencies that are us and within us and all around us. Now, when we learn to use our brain better, it's just mind-boggling how we can achieve goals and dreams that we thought were impossible to achieve before. This is the fun part now. I have a philosophy that every moment, every precious nanosecond and moment is perfect. And so when I connect to the perfection of that moment, there's really nothing to do. It's to be aware and to allow, to surrender, but not to give up surrender, but to understand that, as we're talking right now, the oceans don't need any instruction what to do. The planets that are moving in their elliptical orbits around the sun don't need yours or my intervention. The universe, the Milky Way galaxy that's flowing through the universe at 1.5 million miles per hour doesn't need yours and my instruction. So that means that every moment is perfect. So I want to connect to the perfection of every single moment, be aware of that every single moment, and realize that many things are not to my taste, many things I don't understand, but that doesn't mean that the moment isn't perfect. Every human being has a relationship with money, and money is something that envelops people's brains about what they buy, what they don't buy, whether they buy, business class or first class or regular economy seats, whether they're always looking for the cheapest or the most expensive, the nicest or average, how much they will tip, how much they won't. We all have a money story that we've developed mostly from our parents and the people that we live near. And we developed this relationship around money and our beliefs around money. Are we good enough to earn that amount? Are we worthy enough to earn that amount? Is it worth it or not? And so one of the things that Mary Morrissey says that we should do, she says, for 7 days, write down the thoughts you have about money and notice when you're thinking, and notice what you are thinking, and notice that the money story you're telling yourself, is it positive, negative? Is it abundance thinking or limited thinking? Is it scarcity thinking, or is it what? Fill in the blank. And so once you know your money story, and this is also something that one of our psychiatrists who works with us, Dr. David Kruger, says, once you know the story, the money story, that's when you can start to be aware of it and go, wow, where did I get these limiting beliefs about money, about my value? Where did I get these limiting beliefs of what I can afford and what I can't? Where did I get these limiting beliefs around how I behave with money? Let's say you have a car, which I imagine most people who are watching have a car. Imagine you're driving your car and a light comes on the dash. It's like, oh, I wonder what that light is. And you look a little bit closer and it says you're low on oil in the engine. Okay, so you're aware of that and the light stays on. And then 2 seconds later, another light comes on and you go, what's going on? And it says that the rear tire is low on air. You go, God, what the hell is going on? And so you keep driving. You say at the next gas station, I'm going to stop and I'll fill up the air, and I'll put some oil in the engine so that I top everything up. Now, why am I using that example? When we have an emotion, all emotions, everybody pay close attention. You have emotions, you are not your emotions. Emotions are different than feelings. Emotions happen as an automatic subconscious trigger when your brain is evaluating something you want to do or something that you are doing against the memory that's in there that's causing this old emotion of how you felt or what you did or what you were thinking or what you were experiencing at the time that the memory was created. So all emotions are processed at the subconscious level, and whatever pattern is associated with that behavior that you're doing right now or the incoming stimuli from the outside world is going to trigger this emotion, which then sends a neurochemical release that you feel as guilt and has the thought patterns of guilt or the emotions of being embarrassed. The feeling is the conscious awareness of the cocktail of neurochemicals that have been released, but the emotion is subconscious. So, is it possible to recalibrate a neurological pattern in the brain? Is it possible? If a pattern is nothing more than neurons that have been coalesced or connected, can you interrupt a pattern from the past? Is it possible to interrupt a pattern from the past? So answer that question. Is it possible to interrupt a pattern from the past? Right? So is it possible? Is it possible? Of course it's possible. Any pattern that exists in the brain is nothing more than a group of neurons, brain cells, that in many cases have 10,000 connections, okay, at the end of each neuron that formulate this connectedness between the neurons. So you can interrupt a pattern, just like you can interrupt and create a new habit. You can interrupt an emotional pattern, a behavioral pattern, a feeling pattern, and you can interrupt it using a variety of methodologies. You can take a pattern and you can visualize it getting smaller. You can accentuate it with colors, with animal images, with visualization, with meditation, with mindfulness, with affirmation, with subliminal programming. You can interrupt patterns, and even more important than that, based on the latest research on neuroplasticity, you can create a new pattern, and that becomes the new default pattern. The parts of the brain that register an experience versus the part of the brain that can imagine an experience are not different. So if I imagine doing a bicep curl in my mind, I see my arm moving and I'm doing a bicep curl in my mind, I'm accessing the occipital lobe part of my brain, it is no different than me going to the gym and doing a bicep curl. So when you do both, you solidify the experience even more. Now, I want to just talk about what you just said about your partner who brings in meditation. When most people are asked to do something that they're fearful of, the sympathetic nervous system in the brain kicks in nanoseconds, not in minutes, in nanoseconds. That's the fight or flight response system in the brain. So they want to run away or they freeze and they can't do anything. But if you take that same experience that you want them to do and you have them do it in their mind first in a calm state. So first, if you have them visualize doing that and they feel nervous, but you just have them do one little thing, 6 breaths. Why 6 breaths? We know from the research now that if you imagine in your mind doing something that you're fearful of and you allow the parasympathetic nervous system to rule, that means that you're going to be shallow breathing, you're going to raise your blood pressure, you're going to activate your sweat glands, and you're going to activate all of the fight or fear
response mechanism, the fight or flight response mechanisms. And that is a very tense situation to be in. What if you could take somebody and have them imagine that exact same thing, but before they take the action, they see themselves, they just take 6 deep breaths. 1, see yourself doing it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What happens is because you're breathing deeply in and out, your parasympathetic nervous system, okay, kicks in. Why? Because that is the relax response mechanism in the brain. So if you consciously activate your relaxation response mechanism with something that would normally be stressful for you, you actually deactivate the fear center in the brain, the amygdala. And you actually open up your thinking center of your brain, the genius part of your brain that can actually override the fear center of the brain. It's a small little mechanism that you can just learn how to do. So I say you do both. Not one or. Learn both. Goes back to upgrade your knowledge and skills and saying, why am I afraid? Which system of mine, is operating right now? So think about this. When we walk into a room, we could flip the switch and turn on the light because we want more light. Well, why not flip your own genius switch? Why not flip off the switch of fear and anxiety and stress and flip on the switch of calmness, certainty, and creativity? It's your switch. We just haven't been taught how to turn one switch off and turn one switch on.
What if you said, okay, I want to make, let's just say $100,000 a year or $1 million. It doesn't make a difference. And I asked you, what do you need to believe about yourself to achieve it? So I need to believe I'm smart enough. Good. Write down, I am smart enough. What else do you need to believe? I need to believe that I am worthy. I need to believe that I deserve this. I need to believe that it's possible. I need to believe, you write down 5 or 6 or 7 beliefs that are just words on a sheet of paper. Now, let me stop for just a moment. I'm going to tell a story and come back to this. I want you to imagine that somebody tapped you on the shoulder sometime today and say, hey, I work with Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks in Hollywood, and we have this new script, okay, that if you get really good at this script where you could read it in front of a camera without the script, we'll pay you $10 million. Now, I want you to imagine you've never seen the script, you don't know how to act, but they said to you, we're going to give you an acting coach. We're going to give you everything you need to memorize the script. We're going to give you everything you need to act it perfectly. What would you do to take that script that's on a piece of paper that you've never seen before? What would you do to take that script to make it yours, for you to own it? And the answer is you'd probably read it like what, once? Would you read it maybe 100 times, 200 times, 500 times? You think you might role play with somebody while you're holding the script in your hand? Do you think you might research the role? Do you think you might take a camera and practice it? And do you think that if you practice it 1 time, 50 times, 100 times, 500 times, you can finally put the script down and you can get in front of the camera and go, boom, here is the script. Do you think you could do that? Well, guess what? A script that's on a piece of paper that you don't believe, with practice, you start to believe. So what happens if you take a belief system and you start to imprint it into your subconscious mind, initially through conscious repetition. But there are ways to access the subconscious mind that we know today that are faster and easier than just doing it consciously. And so you take a vision of you achieving your goals and dreams. You take the beliefs you need. You learn how to manage your emotions a little bit better. And then you develop the habits, which again are nothing more than neural patterns in the brain that have been reinforced. And when you learn how to deactivate the destructive ones and activate constructive ones through spaced repetition and reinforcement, now you are resetting your default way of being. Oh. So a belief is nothing more than a reinforced pattern that if you learn how to deactivate it and create a new one, it's like a software upgrade for your brain. All we have, which everybody talks about, is this moment, this precious second right now. So the more I could be here right now, the more I'm living, the life that I want to live. I don't want to be focusing too much about the future, too much about the past. I can use those as something to, hope for in the future, as a guiding post from the past. But right now is the moment that every one of us has. So if you take any event that's occurred in the past, if you just merely think of that event that's occurred in the past, chances are you're firing off the neural network of that pattern, right? So you can take the idea of eating your favorite dessert. What do you think is happening in your brain when you pretend you're eating that favorite dessert of yours and your mouth starts to water and you start to feel, oh, that's such a great dessert? That's neurons in your brain firing and the neurochemistry that is associated with that memory firing. Now, let's say that you have a disempowering pattern of being embarrassed or ashamed or ridiculed, but instead of just thinking about the pattern and going, oh, I don't like it, as soon as you think about the pattern and it has I'm going to say a disempowering or negative emotion, chances are that means that the stress center in the brain has been activated. That means that your heartbeat's going to go up. That means that your sweat glands are going to be activated. That means you're going to breathe a little bit less deeply. You're going to be more shallowly. And that is the fear or stress response. Now, what if instead of allowing that to continue, you just stopped and you had this intention? I'm going to dissolve the effectiveness or the strength of this pattern. How do you do that? Well, first and foremost, you stop, you sit, and you start with inner size number 1 that actually I guide you through in the book. All right. And inner size number 1 is called Take 6, Calm the Circuits. So you want to move from your stress and react system to your relax and respond system. You have parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems, okay, that are triggered within the body. So what happens when you sit quietly and you take 6 deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth like you're blowing out through a straw? When you do it 6 times in 10-second rhythmic breaths, and you focus on the air that you're blowing out through your mouth like you're blowing out through a straw, that simple inner size is inner size number 1, Take 6, Calm the Circuits. It actually deactivates the stress, fear, embarrassment, shame, guilt circuit. And in a quiet, relaxed state, that same memory does not have the same power. But if you don't do it in that state, you do it in a tense, stressful state, you're actually reinforcing that pattern versus thinking about bringing up that old memory and doing this repetitively 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, 40 times until the neurons really don't fire that strength at that strength level.
The stuff that I'm fascinated with is behavior, right? Perception and behavior is how I see myself and how people see themselves and why, and then how they see the world and why. And then we know that the action, I mean, you know, in The Secret, you mentioned earlier, I was in The Secret, and the thing I loved about The Secret is it gave people some hope that changing my thinking really can make a difference. But there's also the other part of it. You know, in the law of attraction, there was one thing that was left out, and it was called the law of Goya. And the law of Goya is the Goya law. It's the get off your ass law. There's nobody that I know other than trust fund friends, okay, that haven't had to do any work to achieve their success. Nobody that I know, whether it's Tony Hsieh, whether it's you, whether it's me, whether it's Mark Cuban, whether it doesn't make Richard Branson, Oprah Winfrey, doesn't make a difference. They've all had to take actions, but it's not just any action. It's taking the right actions in the right order at the right time consistently. And so I've been fascinated with how do we help people develop the mental, emotional, and behavioral habits that lead to success. Because that's the key. Mindset, skill set, and action set. That's the formula.
I have my vision boards, and I actually have my exceptional life blueprint that I've created. It's about 50 pages of my prayers, my rituals for my spiritual growth, health, wealth, my money story, my inner mission, my outer mission.
Wow.
Some of the stuff, either that I have or that I'm creating. And so I create these visual representations to trigger the biggest part of my brain called the occipital lobe and to activate my memory center. So I have vision boards for what I want to create. So I'm giving my brain the exact instructions so that not only it focuses helping me achieve that, what most people don't understand about vision boards or creating goals in writing that are specific is that your brain is a deletion and distortion tool as well. So if you give your brain the instruction of this is the stuff that's important to me for health, God, spirituality, charity, fun, experiences, my children, my mother, my father, myself, whatever it is, and you say this is what I want to trade my life for, delete and distort everything else. Now, all of a sudden, you're using your brain as a deletion and distortion organism in order to be able to help you hyper-focus on what you want.
I got really inquisitive and curious early on with, can I control more of the cause of my results? And that required responsibility. And when I was younger, it was like I was more into the blame game. It's because of him, because of her, because of it, because of the market, because of where I live, because of my mother, my father, how old I am or how young I am, how Asian or Caucasian I am. It doesn't make a difference. So a lot of my upbringing caused me to look outside of myself. And when I looked inside myself and took the prerequisite of responsibility, I own it.
Yes.
And I can change it.
So important.
That transformed my life. That really started to put things into perspective.
Mark Waldman, in his little training over here, says 7 days of gratitude exercise. The more you focus on your thoughts, the more your brain becomes habituated to it. The brain tends to pay more attention to negative thoughts. This is based on the instinctual parts of the brain. We can train ourselves to focus on the positives as well. At the end of the day, he says, write down 3 things you feel grateful for and 3 things you did well. This can change your brain. You only have to do it for 7 days and you will see your self-esteem grow for 3 months. So when we are giving you, gratitude things to do, anything we're teaching you to do, it's all based in neuroscience research. And so the more you're grateful, the more you have to be grateful for. The more you train your brain to be grateful, the more it looks and becomes habituated to look for other things to be grateful for. There's Einstein, which represents our left prefrontal cortex, the smart genius part of our brain that has imagination, that can come up with all the ideas of what about this, I can have this, I can have this. But what most people don't understand is we also have, a Frankenstein part of our brain, the inner critic, that says, but you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, what if you fail, what if you're embarrassed, what if you're ashamed? So we have this, that's why I have them. There's Einstein and there's Frankenstein, just to remind me and to remind my students that both exist within us. And our goal is to understand that, the way our brain works is there's always a protective side of our brain. So Frankenstein's always going, what if you fail? What if you succeed and fail? What if you disappoint yourself? And Einstein's going, don't worry about it. Imagine the future. And so there's this constant battle in our brains, going on. And our goal, and meditation is one of the best ways to recognize that both exist and both are right. Your Frankenstein part of your brain is there to protect you. Your Einstein brain is ready to help you achieve your goals and dreams. And the key is to remember, you're not your brain. You're not the Einstein part. You're not the Frankenstein part. There's another side of you that is much greater than all of it.
I thought I was afraid of public speaking.
Right.
I thought that was, I would just say I'm a bad public speaker. That was my story. Well, you're absolutely right. What you said, that's what it was. I was afraid of judgment. I was afraid of rejection. And that was what was holding me back.
And these are subconscious patterns, right? So the feeling, okay, is this uncomfortable, just very uncomfortable. It's stressful. It creates anxiety. And so it's not the public speaking. So the question is, where did you learn to have this idea that speaking in public causes you to be embarrassed, ashamed, ridiculed, or judged? And here's what a lot of people will say if you ask them, like, where did that come from? They'll say, well, when I was a kid in class and, the teacher asked a question and I answered and the answer was wrong, the other kids made fun of me. Or the teacher said, no, that's not the right answer. And they were embarrassed and the other kids ridiculed them. So like, who the hell wants that? So if our brain is focusing on wiring whatever keeps us safe and whatever keeps pain away, we avoid pain, or we'll do anything to avoid pain way before we do anything to gain pleasure. And so survival first, avoidance of pain second, before we gain pleasure. So if there's any real or imagined danger where we're going to be emotionally hurt, mentally hurt, physically hurt, financially hurt, our brain gives us this signal, be aware. This may be one of those times. It says, be aware, this may be one of those times. And so the cycle, the neural circuit, the cycle shouldn't stop there. But when people haven't been trained on, here are my 6 core emotions, here are my feelings that those emotions cause, and here's what to do. When this emotion is triggered, do this. When this emotion is triggered, do that. And what you want to do is learn when the emotion of fear is triggered, the neurochemistry is adrenaline, cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine. That's like this high anxiety rocket fuel within us. Now, in most people, it causes them to just stop, put on the brake. But how is it that a firefighter, could see a building blowing up in front of them, a building crashing down, a raging fire, and yet she musters up the courage to use that fuel from fear and go in? It's because she's been trained. It's because she's been trained.
I tend to be a goal-seeking guy, right? And I used to not celebrate the small stuff. And I used to just like, bigger goal, more, bigger. And somebody says to me, like, are you going to like slow down just to enjoy some of the stuff that you actually have done for yourself and for people in your family? And I was like, well, let me create an accomplish board.
So good.
Right,
Biggest struggle for me too.
So accomplish board, you passed that test on your own 40 years ago. Celebrate that. You helped this person who was challenged, and celebrate that. You did this for him or for her or for yourself. Celebrate that stuff to remind yourself, because I'm tough on myself. Let's go. It's a goal. Let's go. And sometimes I forget the stuff that I have done, the stuff that I do that I need to remember. So I created an accomplishments board and a list so I can just go to it when I feel like, holy shit, am I smart enough to achieve that next thing? Am I good enough? What a lot of people don't know, Ed, is when I was a kid, I used to feel like I wasn't smart enough. And when I was a kid, it held me back. And today I still feel like I'm not smart enough, and that fuels me to get smarter. So I use it. Like I said, big goals. I go, God, I don't have the skills. I don't have the knowledge, but I can figure it out. I've got contacts. I've got friends. And there's books. There's Google. There's YouTube. There's holy mackerel. I don't need to have all the specialized knowledge anymore. Let's say you have a shortage of money right now. Let's say you're not earning as much as you'd like, and there's too much month left at the end of the money. Too much month left at the end of money creates stress. Decisions around money can create stress. What to buy, what not to buy. Is it too expensive? Is it, not expensive enough for my taste? Well, whatever the stress is. I want you to understand stress a little bit differently from the brain perspective. This is the part of the brain, the brain stem that is attached to the first part of the brain called the reptilian brain, which is connected very, very quickly to the amygdala, the stress response center in the brain. When we have stress in our life, whether it's money stress, emotional stress, relationship stress, business stress, career stress, whatever stress we have, the signal that is sent through the electrical system in the brain and the chemical system in the brain, when stress is activated, there's a part of the brain called the vagus nerve and the sympathetic nervous system, which is part of your autonomic nervous system. But the sympathetic nervous system specifically is the system that activates, the stress response system activates one of four things: fear, okay? And we'll talk about fear in just a moment, but when we're in a state of stress, the fight or flight response kicks in, the sympathetic nervous system. So when we're in a fight mindset, we are using a lot of epinephrine, adrenaline, cortisol, and there's this current of anxiety. Now, that's not that bad if it's a little bit, but when it's too much, it actually deactivates the thinking part of your brain that can actually solve the reason you're stressed. So when we are in this fight or flight, which is runaway modality, or the freeze or faint modality, there are people who freeze when they're under too much stress. There are people who faint under too much stress. There are people who run away, and there's people who just try to fight it. So when we are looking at the brain and we're looking at stress, okay, and this is what Heidi's talking about here. She says stress is our own GPS system saying that something is out of alignment, and the energy movement from the calm and respond part of the brain is gone to the stress and react part of the brain. And so one of the tools to calm the brain down, to go from reactive stress to relax and respond, is inner size number one that we teach, and that you're all going to be able to learn in my new book called Inner Size. But inner size number one is called Take 6, Calm the Circuits. So whenever you're feeling stressed, whenever there's a problem, whenever you're feeling overwhelmed, whenever you're feeling confused, whenever you're feeling like it's too much, stop. As opposed to trying to fight your way through it, stop, calm down, close your eyes, take 6 deep breaths like this. In through your nose, gently, in a rhythm of about 6 breaths per minute, every 10 seconds. And when you do a breathing exercise, take 6, calm the circuits, that's inner size number one, you actually deactivate the stress response center in the brain and you activate the calm and respond part of the brain.
Highly successful people, whether they're taught it like we teach it, or they just know how to do it automatically, they do it. They feel fear, and then they release that fear and they take action anyway. So they can turn their fear into fuel is one of the things that we teach people how to do. Turn your fear into your fuel. And when you turn your fear into your fuel in a calm, centered way, you now are able to use that neuroelectrical chemical called epinephrine or cortisol, the stress hormones, and use them to fuel your success faster and easier than ever before.
You just reminded me of something that I learned that I think people will benefit from is an anxiety attack, stress, panic, ulcerative colitis. All of these things are effects, right? So they're effects. So the question is, what's the cause?
Yes.
Right, so most people are focusing on either, suppressing the effects, depressing the effects, masking the effects. They're doing everything but going, what's causing this?
Yep.
And if we look at the world of cause, whether it's in our physical body, whether it's our relationship, whether it's our bank account, whether it's our business, whatever the result is, every result in the physical world is an effect. So the question is, what causes the results? And one of the greatest laws in the universe is the law of cause and effect. And it states that for every effect, there's a cause. And for every cause, there's an effect.
Now I've got a special bonus clip that I think you're going to enjoy. But before that, it's time for the question of the day. I want to know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week? When you watch a video and you get motivated, the science says you have a 35% chance of following through. That's not enough. But when you write down what time, what place, and how you're going to actually take action on it, you jump to 91% chance of following through. And when you have public accountability and you commit to other people that you're going to do it, it jumps to 95% that you will follow through. So I want that for you, Believe Nation. I want to know your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week. Put it down in the comments below so I can celebrate you.
If somebody has, a fear, like, where is that fear? If I have a fear of spiders and you don't, then that means that it's not the spider, okay, that's the issue. It's the meaning, the pattern that I have and the associations I have with, let's say, spiders, that's the issue. Well, where is that pattern? Well, it's in my non-conscious brain. It's in my brain. Well, what if I can disrupt that pattern using technology? What if I can disrupt that pattern using a variety of evidence-based methodologies, whether it's cognitive behavior therapies that you listen to and you participate in? Well, that is what we're doing. We're just helping people access the parts of their brain where the patterns exist, disrupt the pattern, help them create a new pattern so that the fear goes away. The emotion of fear is an effect, right? It's a feeling. So if we disrupt the pattern, we disrupt the unpleasant feeling that we call fear. So we've learned a variety of different ways that are all based in neuroscience and neuropsychology to disrupt patterns, create new patterns faster than ever before, so that people start to feel better about themselves and about anything that they want to achieve in their life.
If you want 50 more rules from John Assaraf, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
When he started to share with me, to teach me that my entire reality was based on what I believed was real and what I believed was true about myself, about what's possible,